There are certain things that you know about this country that somebody that moves here at the age of 25 will never learn, no matter how old they're going to be.
It's insidious.
And then it's not insidious.
It is insidious. Nationality. Is it a feeling or is it a piece of paper or passport, if you will? I'm Garcia.
I'm Izzy.
And welcome to Informally Informed. So today I want to talk about nationality. Obviously, I think that we're all intelligent, fairly intelligent people. We know what nationality is when said in a everyday, day-to-day conversation. It's the legal part. So you're a legal citizen of a country, all right? And it's usually the country where you're born, but not necessarily, because people immigrate. We're in the global world of global movement, all right? And usually, and sometimes when people talk about nationality, they are talking about culture, traditions, and customs, all right? So it looks a lot different, even though we're talking about the same thing. Because nationality is just a word. It's just a word these days. I mean, unless you're like in the Trump side of things, where it's way more than a word. The MAGA collective made it way more than a word. It's almost become a bit something to beat someone with. But, so here it is. I'm Jamaican. I was born in Jamaica, but I live in the UK. I've lived in the UK for most of my life. I will always say that I'm Jamaican because I'm Jamaican. I hold Jamaican nationality, but I also hold British nationality and a British passport. Sometimes for me, especially depending on who I'm speaking to, it's more beneficial for me to just say to people that I'm British. Especially when I'm out and about. I always find this, it's less in the UK, but more so when I'm like abroad. Because people hear my accent, oh, you're from the UK? And I'm like, I can't bother to go into a whole, well, actually, because it's just not worth it. And also I feel like I'd be giving away more personal information than is needed. But then on the flip side of that, because I was talking to my cousin Kerry about this. Hi, Kerry. I was talking to Kerry about this, and she understood what I was saying. I was saying that when I'm in Jamaica, all right, because people hear this accent and they think I'm British anyway, even though culturally I'm Jamaican, nationality-wise I'm Jamaican. I was born there. So I guess is it just the passports that you hold, or is it feelings that you have? What makes you British?
The passport that I hold.
The passport. But then
That is it depends on what kind of definition.
that's the legal definition of it, sure. But I guess I'm looking at it from my perspective as a perspective of an immigrant who came to this country. I wouldn't say that I'm not culturally British.
No.
But it's not necessarily a feeling, because it's more customs and traditions for me when I think of Jamaica and those things, and the culture in which I was brought up with. Because Jamaica's a rich culture and it permeates worldwide. So I've never been anywhere in the world where I've said I'm Jamaican and people don't go, yeah, man. I'm like, get it together.
Yeah, on that point, I don't think I've ever been anywhere in the world where somebody's asked me where I'm from. I'll obviously either say Manchester or Liverpool. And my answer very much depends on whether or not I want, the Beatles, Yellow Submarine, or whether I want, you're a soccer fellow of Manchester United, woo woo. That's just, you just suck it up. With the whole yeah man thing, you just gotta suck it up, because everybody's got stereotypes of various different places, and that's just the way that it is.
No, of course, but I'm talking about it in a more personal sense, in a personal sense of what nationality means, because I heard a discussion about this.
Can I just interject dead quick about something you said about where you say you're from? So Konstantin Kisin did an interview on, I think it was the BBC. It was in some kind of debate. Somebody kept asking him, but you're from England, you're from Britain, and Konstantin Kisin was like, dude, I'm from Russia. But this guy kept going on and on and on. No, you're from London. What happens when you're on holiday and somebody says, where are you from? You say, I'm from London because that's where you go home. And Constantine's like, no. I say, I'm originally from Russia, but I live in London. I'm originally from Russia. I live in the UK. Because it's one sentence, it explains everything. But this guy was so adamant that he was from England. And Constantine was like, no, I'm from Russia. It's quite interesting. You should watch it. It's interesting.
It is quite an interesting thing. But when I look at like Jamaica it wasn't until 2000 and something that you needed visas to come here. Prior to that, you never did, because Britain was part of the British Empire. So Britain had people in the rest of the world, the wider world, still had British, what's the word? They were still British nationals. So I guess it's one of those questions that sometimes I find it difficult to answer, because I look at Jamaica, which very much, even though we've got our own distinct culture, still very much we still have a governor general, the king, whatever his name is. Which one are we on? Charles. He is still the head of state in Jamaica. So when I hear like, where are you from? I'm like, I'm from Jamaica, but I understand the overall wider sort of stance of, well, then you're British. But Jamaica got independence from Britain in 1960 something. But that didn't change anything until the early 2000s.
And it also depends on which culture you were raised in as to how you would answer that question. So, for example, if you were to go to America, I'm going to say,
yeah.
And I have conversations with people, and they're like, yeah, like, I'm from Ireland, and blah, 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 or I'm Irish, or I'm Polish, and they've got the most American accents, and then you dig down, and what they actually meant was their grandmothers
yeah.
from Poland.
Yeah.
But they throw it into conversation like, I'm Polish, so I know about cured meat or whatever the topic is. And it's like, but you're not though, you're just American. You were born in America, you were raised in America. And I think that it's actually quite a nice thing that we've moved past this idea of sort of, where are you from based on appearance.
I don't think we have.
If people are saying where we, or people are hearing your accent and assuming you're British, that's surely better than going, yeah, but wait.
But not British from Britain. Or it's not British from Britain. It's British from somewhere that isn't England. Because speaking on that,
surely assume you're English.
Well, no, they don't. I was watching a TikTok video. There's I found my way onto TikTok. Finally, I got there. There's this American guy, and he lives in.
Resisting with every fibre of my being.
It's fine. I'm watching it for both of us, but not enough to for it to be a problem. Like drugs. So, but I'm watching this American guy in Britain, and he's talking to all these people, and he's talking to them and asking them what makes Britain, and all of these questions. And a lot of those same sentiments of, well, if you're of a different skin colour, then you are somewhere else plus British. There are a lot of British people that could actually, black British people that can trace their ancestry back to Britain. But it's it's one of those things where people think that Britain only got immigrants during the Windrush. That's not true either. History actually says that.
British, but as an identity, just means a passport.
Yeah, Britishness.
You can be from France, come to the UK, live here for 10 years, and get a British passport. You're British. You're not English. You're never going to be English. You're going to be British. You can move to England, be born and raised in England, but have parents who are French, first language is French. You're French.
But culturally.
But you're British.
But you're culturally
British,
French.
But you're French.
But yeah, exactly. But this is what I'm trying to say. It's like
Scottish people. You can tell a Scottish person a mile off by the colour of their hair.
However, it's a lot different. You're looking at it from a very sort of, my perspective on this is, very definitional. Whilst I said that it is the definition of Britishness, we know what that is. I read it out at the beginning. I'm talking about the impacts, the cultural impacts, the things that make you whatever place it is that you say you're from. So people that are like, or that you are from, people that come here, for example, that come from Poland, that are Polish but hold British identity documents or whatever, but still carry out Polish traditions because culturally and by nationality, because you can hold both, you are in fact Polish and British. So it's a dual identity. It's that wider societal thing. And then I hear it a lot with.
But I would also argue that there's no such. I'm, I suppose, weird like this. I would also argue there's no such thing as British identity. British culture. There's a UK culture, if you want to call it that. There's an English culture, a Welsh culture, a Scottish culture, an Irish culture. But British literally means a passport as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, but then I guess because there is no English passport, Scottish passport, etc., when you're looking at it, even by definition, we only have the British passport. So even if you're looking at it in the same way that you are, there's only that. So but how you are culturally is defined differently from your passport. Yeah, so I guess my takeaway from that is that sort of what I learned from these questions when asked to me is that how I claim things totally depends on the situation and who I'm speaking to. My nationality is important to me, but not as important to me as my culture is.
Which nationality? Both?
Both of them, but nowhere near as important to me as my culture. Because there was, at one point, there was no such thing as a Jamaican passport either. It was a British passport. So, but the traditions and the customs that make those things are the things that are actually the things that I adhere to. My customs.
So when people talk about British culture, that's what they're referring to then. The cultural values that are important to them, as opposed to the passport, the identity.
But when people are talking about British nationality, it doesn't mean anything really except a piece of paper. Because culturally, it's way more than that. Those are my takeouts. Those were the takeouts I took from this.
And it's important to know that you've lived in the UK a long time.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things that you know about this country that somebody that moves here at the age of 25 will never learn, no matter how old they go to be. Right?
True.
They're not going to understand the nuances of me being able to say to somebody, isn't it weird how in England we judge inflation rate based on the price of a Freddo bar?
Yep.
There's things like that. There's nuances in language and the way, like, I have had so many...
I think it's 8 miles you have to travel before the accents change.
Miscommunications with my American friends because we use different words for the same thing, and she thought I meant one thing and I thought I meant something else. Yeah,
like Fanny.
My friend in America was telling me about how she went for dinner with a British person when she was in England and his entire family, and she announced in front of the entire room that she loves a good nosh. And everyone just...
That's so laughing.
And everyone just sort of looked at her, and she had to like be pulled aside and said, "Nosh doesn't just mean food in this part of the world. We have a different meaning, you know."
Yeah.
Like there's certain nuances. I remember watching a YouTube video about somebody reading a letter that his great grandfather or his grandfather had written during the Second World War about, I think it was 2 places, counties that were it was like Kent and Essex or Swindon, and they were very close, and Bournemouth or something like that. Bournemouth and name another place on the south coast, Portsmouth. Are they next to each other?
No. But I get it. Go on.
And he'd been stationed in this other location that was, for all intents and purposes, like 30 miles away. And he was writing this letter to his wife, and it was like, I miss everything about my hometown. I miss the people. I miss the place. I miss the culture. I miss the food. But this was the 1940s. It wasn't the 1800s. How different were the people, really? How different was the food or the culture, really, when you're only 30 miles away? It's more than that. Do you know what I mean? So we can look at that letter objectively and go, well, that was a load of nonsense because he's only gone 30 miles down the road. Everything's the bloody same in that part of the world, which is true. but from an identity point of view,
it's not true.
There's cultural nuances there that make someone feel at home.
Of course, look at
Like,
Liverpool, Manchester. They're right next to each other, but culturally, very different.
I remember being in Tunisia, walking down the street in Tunisia, and some guy walked past me. He's like some 60-year-old bloke with his wife, and he had like a Metallica t-shirt on, but it was a really cool design. So I just went, cool t-shirt. And he went, cheers love, tenner from Wigan Market. Right? And I turned around and I was like, oh, you're one of them pie eaters, are you? And he was like, please tell me you're not from St. Helens. And I'm like, right? So things like that, whether they have any significant meaning or not, makes you feel like you've got family everywhere.
Of course, but I guess I'm still looking at it in a bigger picture, but also a smaller one, like a macro and micro, because I'm still looking at it in terms of like, you know, when you're, well, you probably don't, when you're with people, I find this especially, and I mean no disrespect when I say this, these are the actual legal definitions, right? There is such thing as white. When I'm with my white friends, no offense, and or people I don't know who tend to be, we're in a majority white country, so whatever. They always ask the question of, well, where you from? Where you really from? And I'm like, I understand the question, but generally, it can be quite offensive, especially when you're looking at. No, you don't. To be fair, you don't. When you're asked,
I don't ask that to anyone.
No,
I just kind of assume whatever answer they give me that they're going to give me, and I base it on somebody's accent.
That's fair, but as a general term of that question, if we're looking at nationality as being in paper, and like the British don't have a separate passport nationality or whatever, that question shouldn't really be asked. It's actually quite I think I find it quite offensive.
But then I had this conversation with somebody a while back.
We've had this conversation where you were like, and I told you I find it quite offensive.
And I said to this individual, I can't remember where her family's from, but she's got a British accent. And I sort of said, well, you know, if somebody says, where are you from? And then they go, where are you really from? I think it's somewhere in Africa. And I was like, well, that's asking a question to somebody that you wouldn't ask a different race. You're basing the way you interact with somebody based on their race.
It's insidious.
And then it's not insidious.
It is insidious. Okay.
Let me finish my point, because I'm not finished my point.
But you interrupt me.
Finish your point. I'm finishing my point. So then she turned around to me and said, actually, no, I don't agree with you. I think it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful that I get to tell people that I'm from this other place, and I really enjoy being asked that question. So again, it's perspective.
Of course, perspective. Everything's perspective, but I think it depends on who's asking it and the reason that they're asking it. Because a lot of the times when I get asked that, it's quite insidious in nature. I can tell. You can tell if somebody's asking because they're genuinely interested, or they're trying to make a point. Do you know what I mean? So I think it depends. But anyway, I mean, those are my takeaways, which is that, you know...
So recap over your takeaways, stay quick.
So to recap, nationality is more than just paper. It also incorporates culture, traditions, and customs. The thing that makes you whatever nationality you claim is a personal thing to you, outside of the separate sort of paper. Culture plays a massive part in that, in your nationality, because your national identity. And do you know what? Even though I've just recapped it, I'm just thinking of a general point of culture, like Britain and sports. We love football. Football's created in England. We love football.
A lot of sports are created in the UK.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about it in football terms, like soccer, whatever you want to call it. We love it. We side-eye our own people when they're waving an English flag. But you go to America, right? national identity to the wazoo. Like, but here it's more of a, it's looked down upon.
It's almost hypocritical.
How so?
Because your sports day, you've got the flag out. Then the rest of the year, you're looking down at people for getting the flag out for different reasons.
It's an interesting.
Like, I think national pride is important. I think identity is hugely important. It can make or break people. It can lead to lack of identity. Can lead to all sorts of increased rates of depression.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at that woman that did the experiment to basically become a man for a year. Got dressed up in makeup, went to the bowling, made new friends. Didn't tell any of them that she was secretly a woman. She wanted to know what it was like to be in male-only spaces without them altering their behaviour based on her being there. She had such an identity crisis, she ended up killing herself. So, and that identity is incredibly important. So I think national identity and national pride have been able to go, hey, England, whatever, like they do in all the other countries. I think that's a positive thing.
I think it's a positive thing, but in terms of identity, I think it's hard, especially like when you look at, now these days we have like this, the 23andMe, Ancestry, blah, 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 etc. for you to trace your roots. But there's a lot of people in the world that can't.
Don't commit crimes though, and then
don't commit crimes and then end up doing that shit. They will use that shit to hunt you. Like, but then there's a lot of people that can't do that. And so they end up in those increased rates of suicide, depression, all the rest of it. African Americans, a lot of them have this issue with the identity thing.
They destroyed all the documents.
Yeah,
they have no idea where they
no idea.
Ancestries from, yeah.
Identity is important, and I think that's my main takeaway from this. However you identify is very important, and as long as you're able to stick to your findings, because as you grow as well, and you'll change. Identity changes. Yeah, it changes. So as long as you know who you are and you stay true to that, then nationality and all of those things, secondary. Anyway, so that's it. Thank you for joining us. I took a deep introspective turn there at the end, but thank you for joining us. And
let us know what you think. Let us know if your identity's changed over time. And if there's anything you can add to the conversation in terms of takeaways and lessons learned. And we'll see you in the next one.
See you in the next one. Let us know if you agree or disagree with any of our views. That's the point of the conversation. Join in.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell.